Skinwalker encounter? I still can't wrap my head around what I saw and felt and heard in my head. If there's any way to debunk this, please let me know. I live in a rural area in Florida. This happened a few weeks ago. I was driving by myself at around midnight, and I came to a stoplight where there's a cemetery on the right and a new apartment building on the left. This particular light is extremely long since it's not activated by sensors when you pull up to the light. So, I'm waiting for a few minutes, and all of a sudden, I instinctively look behind me. It felt like someone was watching me intently. About 30 feet away from where I was waiting for the light is a bus stop behind me. Right in front of the benches where you wait for the bus, I see a huge figure that looks like a wolf or a giant dog. I'm staring at it, thinking to myself, wow, that's an enormous dog. All the while, I start to feel goosebumps. I feel my heart start racing, and I can't figure out why. I start to feel evil thoughts in my head. I say feel because I couldn't make out what words were being said. I just remember, while I was staring at this dog, I felt like it was mocking me, laughing, and challenging me. Then, I see the figure stand up on two legs while staring in my direction. It stood up and was suddenly taller than the top of the bus overhang. But it didn't look like a human. It looked like an animal, just started standing on two legs. Meanwhile, I'm still waiting for this damn light to turn green. And keep in mind, there's lights all around the bus stop, but this figure was pure black. So, the figure stood up on two legs, and now it looked like a huge dog with an alpaca neck and body, but the neck looked really girthy. I see this thing continue to stare in my direction, and I think to myself, okay, this is really weird, but even if it's my imagination, it's gonna disappear when I start driving. The whole time, I'm feeling panicked, and I hear in my head, run, but I can chase you. I skirt out the bus stop from the stoplight. It's still freaking red, but I don't care at this point, and I drive away as quickly as I can. And then, I look behind me as I'm driving, and the freaking figure is sprinting at full speed on all fours behind me. It looked like a deranged wolf was chasing me. I felt pure panic as I was speeding away. And maybe out of instinct, I yelled, I have God with me. You can't hurt me. Nothing can hurt me. I am protected by my angels and by God. I'm paraphrasing here. It was at that point I realized I was feeling like I was being choked. Because after I said that out loud, I felt like I could breathe. I didn't feel like I was being chased anymore. And when I looked back, the thing was gone. Am I literally insane in the membrane? I do believe in the paranormal, and I do believe in skinwalkers. But I honestly hope it was just my imagination, because this happened 2 minutes from my house. Please let me know what you think. Why you should never sweep your house at night. In Africa and Asia, it is said by the wisest that you should never wipe the house at night. This popular belief suggests that this habit represents a strong attraction to bad luck, since such practice could remove the influence of the goddess Lakshmi, responsible for abundance, youth, luck, and beauty. In many countries in Latin America, this superstition is also present in the same way, although it indicates something much darker. As it has been said, this superstition indicates the abundance of bad luck. But it is a mistake to think that bad luck is only an imaginary force that conditions events and circumstances independent of human will. Often, bad fortune is related to a cruel and terrifying entity, disgrace. This entity was present in the family's events 3 times, and the first of them happened 42 years ago. So, with the arrival of her first child in 1981, my mother-in-law moved to her husband's parents' house. She was not happy there, for the mother-in-law was a severe and controlling person who didn't think she was a good fit for her son. Once, after spending the night watching movies with her husband and his cousins, she noticed that there were some popcorn scattered on the floor. She knew that little mess would upset her mother-in-law, so she got a broom and started to sweep the floor. She knew about the superstition, but she wasn't scared about it at the moment. So after sweeping the room, she left the broom outside the house and went to sleep. During the night, around 2 a.m., my mother-in-law heard a noise that seemed to come from someone sweeping the floor. She immediately got up from the bed, upset as she thought her mother-in-law was trying to bother her because of the dirty floor. She opened the door at once, thinking she'd find her mother-in-law. But it was something much, much worse. Standing in front of her door, there was the most horrible thing she had ever seen. A tall, thin creature with rotten body skin. It had large, deep eyes and a macabre smile on its face. As soon as she saw it, my mother-in-law shouted as loudly as she could and fainted. She woke up seconds later with her husband's family around her. She explained to them what she had seen, but they told her it was probably a hallucination due to a drop in blood pressure. She wanted to believe that. The next morning, she got up earlier to prepare her baby's breakfast. When she left her room, she realized that right next to her door was the broom she had left outside the house. To this day, 42 years later, many nights, my mother-in-law still has trouble sleeping thinking about that thing. P.S. Nowadays, I live with my family in the same house where this and so many other events took place. Three knocks and a lady repeatedly screaming. First time posting here, and this is not my only paranormal experience, just the most recent. On November 16th, 2023, around 3:26 a.m. in Toronto, Canada. I woke up and heard a lady on the streets just yelling, "Please help me," on repeat. I'm on the 12th floor, so sound was coming from down the streets. Initially, I didn't think much of it, but from the moment I woke up, I already felt something wasn't right. And within 5 seconds of me getting up, I heard 3 knocks on my wall, and that sent chills down my spine. At that point, I got scared and knew something is definitely not right with this. My thought process was, I do want to help the lady, maybe, but I feel this is more of an invitation call. If I were to go to my balcony and look, I feel like I might accidentally fall for the spiritual trap. But then, what if she did need help? Am I a bad person or scaredy cat and just ignoring a person in need? So I just waited and listened. She didn't say anything else, just repeated and repeated, "Please help me, please help me." Another thought I had was, if she really needs help, there are several condos with security guards in the lobby looking out, and she would be able to ask any of them to call the police. I know she's not in danger because if she was in danger of getting attacked, she would be entering any one of the condos to hide and get security to help her quickly. The most interesting thing, which reinforced my thought of it being paranormal besides the 3 knocks, was when I stopped focusing on the screaming. I can hear the screams as a cat's meowing. At that point, I just prayed for protection, going on Google for the Lord's Prayer and YouTube for other prayers, asking God and Jesus to protect my space and my soul. That made me feel better, but the screams were still going. After about 10 to 15 minutes, her screams faded away. So I just went back to sleep. I know a lot of people will think they wouldn't be able to go back to sleep. For me, I can, because this is not the first time I've dealt with the paranormal. I used to need the nightlight for someone there to watch me sleep when I was a kid. But after seeing ghosts for the first time, I was actually able to sleep without a nightlight, which is kind of reverse. I could go back to sleep because my faith is strong. Mind you, I was still scared though, but I experienced this type of evil stuff before, and God and the Bible prayer did help me get through that. So I felt it'll be fine this time as well. One last interesting thing for that night was my dream after. There were no ghosts or demons in the dream. It was just me in my condo, but with a lot of clutter. In the dream, I quickly realized I was in a dream and wanted to wake up, but I couldn't. I had to put a lot of focus and energy to wake back up. It was around 4:30 a.m. at this point. From my Chinese background, I know when someone calls your name at night. Don't answer it. Also, from other Western paranormal shows and stories, I understand the 3 knocks are requests to enter your spiritual space. I don't know what I did to even cause this to happen. I was not watching horror or doing some witchy things or Ouija boards. I wasn't even thinking about the paranormal. The only thing I can think of for this to have happened is my mom is in China right now, and she loves going to spiritualist temples and getting readings and talismans. I hope she is not the one causing this, but I'll ask her what she did when she gets back and what she was doing exactly on November 15th to the 16th. Just wanted to share my experience and ask if anyone experienced the 3 knocks and what did you do or not do after. Maybe I'm overthinking and it's nothing, or maybe it's another paranormal experience. I grew up in an old Victorian home. My kids will often tell me they think they saw a ghost in our house or claim our house is haunted. I always tell them no, I'm sure your eyes are playing tricks. Of course, that is what most parents would say. When my kids ask me how I know, I just simply tell them because I know what it's like to live in a haunted house. It wasn't until I left my childhood home that I realized just how off it was. That house felt like no other home I've ever lived in. After my parents divorced in the mid-90s, my mother and 2 brothers and I lived in an apartment for a while before finding a beautiful large Victorian home for rent that was in my mother's budget. The house was well over 100 years old. It was white with a large front porch. It was technically 2 stories, but really 3 since it had a full attic that you took stairs to get to. The house was right next to an old Baptist church, like close enough you could touch both at the same time. It didn't take long for us to realize that we were not alone in that home. and strange activity continued for the 5 years we lived there. I was 17 when we moved in, and I was the oldest brother. Over time, we concluded that at least 3 additional spirits were attached to the house. There was a woman who was most often heard, but when seen, she always appeared the same. She had a slim build, long dark hair, and wore a long dark dress, and was always seen in the kitchen. There was a deck in the back of the house that led into the kitchen, and often, when entering the house from there, you would see her through the windows, either sitting at the table or walking across the kitchen. However, when you would open the door and enter, she would be gone. If you were in the living room just off the kitchen, it was quite common to hear her going about her business. The sounds of the cabinets opening and closing, water turning on, and dishes being moved occurred often. One afternoon, as I sat in the living room, I heard the outside door to the kitchen open with a telltale sound of the weather stripping moving across the linoleum. I never heard the door close, but whoever entered was whistling a tune. I said hello a few times with no response before checking the kitchen, only to find it empty and the door closed. The second spirit was that of a young girl. She was only seen once, and that was enough. One night, my younger brothers went to the basement to play pool. You had to go down the old wooden stairs in the corner of the house and then turn 180 degrees to walk down a hall to the other end of the basement where there was a small room with the pool table. As they flipped on the light, they briefly saw her standing in the window in a flowery dress, only there for a moment before disappearing. On another night, my middle brother left his upstairs bedroom to get a drink from the kitchen. When he returned, his bedroom door was unexpectedly closed. As he opened it, a young girl's voice said, "Come in." A few months later, on the back of the built-in bookcases in the family room, the words, "Hello, my name is Amy," was found written in pencil in a young child's penmanship. From then on, we just started referring to the phantom child as Amy. The last spirit was that of a man. Like the girl, he was only seen once. While watching television, my middle brother looked to his right to see him sitting on the couch with him. Like the girl, he vanished as soon as he appeared. While rarely seen, he was the most felt spirit in the house. A horrible feeling of unease. You could feel him in the basement just watching you. We all hated doing laundry down there, and you could feel him at your feet as you hustled back up the basement stairs. Speaking of stairs, the stairs to the second floor had a landing in the middle before turning 90 degrees and continuing up. There was a closet at this landing that always had a creepy vibe to it. My girlfriend, who is now my wife, was very sensitive and felt that something awful occurred in that closet. She believed it was something between the man and the young girl. Anytime my girlfriend showered there, she kept the shower curtains open because she had to know that the bathroom was empty because she could just feel his eyes. One of the stranger events in the house involved my girlfriend. We both worked across the street at the city beach. She asked if she could run back to the house to borrow a sweatshirt. As she approached the kitchen door, she saw who she assumed was my mother sitting at the kitchen table, with her back to the door. My girlfriend opened the door, and the woman was gone. She then headed upstairs to grab that sweatshirt. At the top of the stairs, something caused her to look left towards my youngest brother's room. The door was halfway open, and she could see my brother sitting up in bed just staring at the wall ahead. Feeling bad that she woke him up, She quickly went to my room, grabbed the sweatshirt, and left. She told me how she saw our kitchen ghost, and then apologized for waking up my brother. I then had to tell her that wasn't my brother. My brother was at work. Something was sitting in his bed, but it wasn't him. It wasn't just phantom people that occupied the home. There were also phantom dogs. As mentioned before, the attic was like a whole other level to the home. It was completely unfinished and original up there. Early on, our cat followed us up there. I remember her slowly walking towards one of the dark corners before slowing down, arching her back and hissing. She bolted out of there fast and never went up there again. It wasn't uncommon to hear low growling while you were up there. One morning, I woke up to the sound of scratching and whining at the attic door. When I opened the door, nothing was there. In fact, the back of the door was covered in insulation. I did decide to remove the insulation, and not surprisingly, the back of the door was covered in scratch marks. I'll just hit on a few more strange occurrences before wrapping this up. One day, my youngest brother was standing in front of his closet when something pushed him from behind into the closet and slammed the door. He was locked inside for about an hour before the door just opened on its own. Then, there was a night where my middle brother was talking on the phone while walking around the room and gesturing with his hand. A rosary suddenly fell from nowhere into his hand. It was a very old rosary that he had never seen before. The house had a reputation among our friends. Despite friends who showed no fear on the football field, most of them refused to be in my house after dark, and no one was ever brave enough to sleep over. Apparently, the reputation went further. My brother was working his shift at the gas station when a man and daughter came to the register. The man was wearing a B&H Lumber shirt. B&H Lumber just happened to be on the same street as our old house. Making small talk, my brother mentioned we lived at home at the end of the street next to the church. The man gave him a strange look and then said the house was a gateway and in conflict with the church next door, and that we should move out immediately if we still did live there. My brother was a bit shocked and tried to prompt him for more information, but the man said he didn't want to scare his daughter, and then they soon left. I admit, it reminds me of Crazy Ralph from the Friday the 13th films. I wish my brother would have pressed him for more details and how he claims to know this. As crazy as it sounds, perhaps he was right. We did eventually move out, but not because we felt scared or threatened. Another family moved in after, and I guess things did not go well for them. The son ended his life in that house. In my old room of all places. The parents apparently went downhill pretty fast after that. They trashed the home and even started spraying graffiti on the walls. We know this because a family friend was actually hired to clean up and restore the house so they could get new tenants in there. It was by now that shows like Ghost Hunters were popular, and we became aware of things like going on a ghost hunt. My brothers and I arranged to get back into our old childhood home for a haunt. Unfortunately, before we could get back there, fate had other plans. Nearby road construction struck a gas line which blew up the church next to our old home. The house caught fire, and despite the best efforts to fight it, the house was lost. I actually got to watch it live on the news as they fought the fire. Watched the house collapse and saw the bulldozers finish the job. Where the church and house once stood is now an empty green lot. All that's left is the memories and strange tales of our time there.